3 spine-chilling true horror stories. The sinister voice in the haunted forest knew my name. Sarah had hoped moving into the old house would be a fresh start for her and her 2 kids. But as whispers danced through the chilly air each night, she started to worry they'd landed in the middle of a nightmare. The friendly neighborhood quickly turned sinister, shadows lurking just beyond her vision. The tales of a haunted forest that beckoned to the unsuspecting gnawed at her confidence. The other parents joked light-heartedly, but there was a tremor in their voices that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Don't let the woods swallow you whole," they laughed, but deep down, she could feel the tremors of fear stitched beneath their words. Silence hovered, sharp and thick, while they smiled at her. It felt like she had entered a world where danger was dressed up as kindness, and every glance held a secret she wasn't supposed to know. Laying in bed after tucking her kids in, Sarah heard her name carried by the wind. Sarah. It felt close, right next to her, intimate, as if someone were whispering into her ear. Goosebumps raced over her skin. No, it couldn't be real. She was just tired, right? Yet, the whispers grew louder with each passing night, tugging tighter at the frayed edges of her sanity. The following day, she learned about the town's dark history, families that ventured into the woods, drawn in like moths to a flame, only to vanish, leaving behind nothing but echoes of their screams. Her heart raced as the reality settled in, panic clawing at her throat. The woods weren't just a mere backdrop, they were alive, pulsating with a hunger that made the entire neighborhood feel like a trap. Sarah decided to reach out for comfort. She approached her next-door neighbor, a woman with an unsettlingly sweet smile, who invited her inside with glimmering eyes that hid something beneath the surface. The conversation, at first, felt warm and welcoming, but soon the edges blurred. Maybe the stories weren't folklore after all. As the hours stretched longer and dusk fell like a curtain, Sarah felt the night creeping toward her with a sense of foreboding. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She bolted up, wide-eyed. The whisper had grown sharper, calling to her from behind the trees, an enchanting yet sinister lilt. The world outside became impossibly quiet, as if even nature was holding its breath. Fear choked her. She couldn't lose her kids. What if they were lured too? Against her better judgment, the sound drew her closer to the forest edge. The trees loomed larger, shadows twisting and writhing into sinister shapes. With dread pooling in her stomach, she could barely breathe as she stood on the brink of that dark passage, which felt less like an invitation and more like a trap. The ominous call echoed again, more persistent, "Sarah, come find us." The connection struck unnervingly close to home. Heart racing, she turned her head toward her house, every instinct screaming to retreat. But those voices were beckoning her with the weight of secrets untold, revealing a terrifying truth. Their grasp on her was tightening. Faced with an insatiable forest, she had to make a choice: plunge deeper into mystery or flee into the uncertain safety of her home. The trees whispered her name again, the sound slipping into her mind like a venomous serpent. Would she dare find out who or what was pulling her deeper into the abyss? The pull was irresistible. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as she took a step closer, feet moving as if on their own accord. The layer of fog rolled out like an invitation, wrapping itself around her like a cold embrace. The whispers grew clearer now, more like a chant, a melody that twisted and curled around her hope, enveloping her in a cocoon of confusion. "Sarah, come find us," the voices droned, now laced with urgency. She felt the ground shift underneath her, soft and damp, swallowing her shoes with every cautious step. The shadows danced, beckoning her deeper into the thicket, where ancient trees towered like silent sentinels, their roots clawing at the earth as if trying to break free. She hesitated, catching a fleeting glimpse of her children's faces in her mind, innocent and trusting. What if they wandered out here? What if they answered the call? Panic struck her like a bolt of lightning. She had to summon courage, to resist, but something deeper within her twisted and writhed, whispering promises of answers, of freedom from her fears. As she tread further, the air grew thick, and the light faded. It felt wrong, too quiet, like the calm before a storm. The trees shielded her from the world, yet they seemed to watch her, their gnarled branches like skeletal fingers reaching for her. Anxiety itched at her skin, every instinct screamed danger. "Mommy!" A fragile voice floated out from the darkness, shattering her thoughts. It was Lily, her youngest. Panic surged through Sarah. She turned to run, but the whispering intensified, enveloping her in its grasp. "Sarah! Come find me." "No! I have to go back," she shouted, but the forest gulped down her words. The urge grew more compelling, confusion turning into chaotic desperation. The very ground beneath her feet pulsed like a heartbeat, and she didn't know if it belonged to her or the woods. Fighting against the need to yield, Sarah struck out toward home, fists clenched. Yet the forest refused to let go. The whispers morphed into echoes of laughter, mocking her, calling her foolish for attempting to flee. With each step, she felt tendrils of shadow reaching, pricking at her arms and legs, trying to pull her back into their embrace. It was as if the trees shared a breath, exhaling her fear, their roots thick and insistent. Suddenly, the laughter stopped. Silence swallowed her whole. A heavy weight settled on her chest. Then came the voice again, deeper and darker, echoing off the trees, stinging her ears like ice. "They want to play, Sarah. They're waiting for you." Visions of her children flared in her mind, intermingled with the secret lives the woods promised. What if her kids were already lost? What if they were being lured like moths to flame, drawn in like she was? Her heart hammered, panic clawing down her throat, thick like smoke. With new resolve, she took a deep breath and sprinted back toward the house, each step heavier than the last. The shadows lashed out, whispering, urging her to turn around, to see what lay hidden in the depths. The call of the forest began to wane, but sinister roots clung to her heels, as if screaming defiance. Just as she thought she'd escape, something snapped in the underbrush behind her. A sharp, guttural scream pierced the silence. A scream that was achingly familiar. Was it her child? Sarah froze. The allure of the forest turned to sheer panic. The darkness behind her began to swirl, and something heavy and cold forced her to look back. The choice was no longer hers. What had she awakened in those woods? And would it let her leave? The shadows danced back, twisting into grotesque shapes that stretched across her vision. Sarah's heart raced as she strained to make out what lurked in the darkness. The familiar scream etched itself into her mind, a horrifying echo. "Lily!" she shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. The trees loomed ominously, bending as if they heard her plea. The fog thickened, closing in like a snare. She dared to step back toward the scream, but a sudden gust of wind pushed her, pressing her against the trunk of an ancient birch. Its bark felt alive, pulsing beneath her touch. "Lily!" She screamed again, praying for a response, but the only reply came from the trees whispering conspiratorially among themselves. Memories flickered through her mind, her daughter twirling in the sun, laughter bright and buoyant. This forest held no such light. Something shifted behind her, something too close that made her skin crawl. Sarah whipped around, her breath hitching in her throat as her eyes scanned the darkened path. The branches twisted unnaturally, knotting together as if forming a barrier to keep her from passing. Every instinct warned her to turn back, but she couldn't abandon Lily, not now. "Come find us, Sarah," the whispers cooed again, but this time they sounded tantalizing, beckoning. She pressed her palms against her ears, desperation clawing at her chest. What if she was too late? What if this was just a cruel game? But as the thought of her daughter being lost in the maw of the woods sunk in, another surge of courage bloomed. No time to second-guess the unholy pact she felt intertwining with her thoughts. Shaking, she took a deep breath and plunged deeper into the fog. Mist swirled around her ankles, making her legs feel heavy. Every sound, every crack of a twig sent shivers racing up her spine. Was that something watching her? "Mommy," the voice was faint, almost drowned out by the writhing branches around her. Sarah's heart flew at the sound. It came from ahead. She moved towards it, forcing her feet to march forward despite the shadows closing in on her. The deeper she went, the more distorted the air became, heat against a cold that prickled her skin. An eerie calmness fell over the forest, broken only by the softest rustle of leaves that felt like breath. "Lily?" She called again, a bitter rush of hope colored with dread. The dense curtain of fog parted just ahead, revealing a glade bathed in an otherworldly glow. In the center, something small was curled up. Was it her daughter? Breathing heavily, Sarah rushed forward, clutching her chest in an attempt to still her racing heart. But as she approached, the figure transformed before her eyes. The familiar face twisted unnaturally, eyes turned hollow, a mockery of her child. "Join us, Mommy," it intoned, voice dripping with something sweet yet sinister. Sick horror pumped through her veins. This was no longer her daughter. The thought tightened around her throat as realization crashed over her like icy water. She recognized the voice. It was the same voice that had echoed through the trees, the one that had become her own. "Get away!" she gasped, stumbling backward, the edges of the clearing closing in. The laughter returned, loud, mocking, ringing out in a cruel symphony that twisted Sarah's insides. The forest was alive, and it hungered for more than just her presence. It wanted her essence, her spirit. "Lily!" She cried out one last time, panic spilling into the night as she turned to flee, but the forest wouldn't let her go that easily. Tendrils of mist lashed out, grasping at her ankles, pulling her back, cold fingers wrapping around her wrists like chains. The trees closed in, their branches whispering secrets of how many had been lost before her. Driven by sheer terror, she fought against them, but the deeper truth surfaced in her mind, lingering like a shadow. She wasn't just running from the woods. She was running toward the depths of darkness she had never truly understood. What price would she have to pay to escape? And could she save her daughter before it was too late? As she felt something cold slither across her skin, she knew she had to decide or be lost forever. Clutching her daughter's name as a talisman, Sarah fought against the mist that threatened to crush her spirit. The cold wrapped around her, slick and suffocating, like a filthy blanket. Panic surged, pushing her deeper into the thicket, where the trees leaned in, their knotted branches aiming to snare her. With every step back, the forest howled, angry and vengeful. The whispers morphed into a chaotic cacophony, voices blending into a single chorus eager to swallow her whole. "Join us, Sarah!" they chanted, a twisted melody that struck primal chords of fear within her. "Lily!" Her voice broke again, fragile and desperate, as she stumbled over roots coiled like snakes. She could almost feel the walls closing in, each thud of her heart echoing in a rhythm that pounded in time with the sinister whispers. Then, as she tore through, a silhouette shifted between the trees. A fleeting figure. Was it her imagination, a trick of the light? She squinted through the mist, breath catching. A lurch of hope huddled against the pulsating dread. "Mommy!" The voice called again, more insistent, floating toward her like a leaf caught in a breeze. It was softer now, sweeter. She wanted to believe it, trust in the familiar note. Could it really be Lily? "Stay away from them." A new voice pierced through the fog, deep and gravelly, jagged like a broken glass shard. It sent a jolt of recognition and fear through Sarah. The protective tone ignited a glimmer of resolve. "Lily!" She screamed again, scanning the shadowed trees. The voice had changed, and with it came a growing sense of urgency. The figure reappeared, lingering beyond reach, just inside the haze. "Come, Mommy." This time it was close, bearing an uncanny resemblance to her daughter. With every step forward, Sarah could feel tendrils of confusion wrapping tighter around her. Could this be another deception, another cruel mirage? Get away from her. The deeper voice barked again. She didn't know if it was warning her or shouting in frustration. But then the laughter ensued, horrific, echoing, reverberating against the trees, joining in the taunting chorus. You'll never escape. You'll join us. The forest felt alive, pulsating heavily with malice, like a nail driven to the center of a spinning wheel. Sarah felt the growing pain in her chest, a storm of desperation and love for her daughter mixed with a knowledge of the danger looming. She had to choose fighting against the forest. She whipped around, her back pressed up tightly against the ancient birch tree, as its bark slithered against her. Just give me a sign, Lily. She pleaded, not sure if she even wanted to know the truth. The figure murmured sweetly again, the hollow eyes boring into her soul. Why don't you join us, Mommy? We can be together forever. It felt like a betrayal of every maternal instinct, but the urge to protect her child warred with the fear that twisted and coiled inside her like a serpent. Hands shaking, she pressed forward, closing the space between the terrified mother and her beckoning child. She had to know, but as she reached out, what she touched was not warm, not alive. Cold, slimy fingers, grasping tightly around her wrist. Goosebumps erupted along her skin as she realized too late this wasn't her Lily. The forests laughed louder. Shadows swirled. Suddenly, the grip released. Sarah stumbled back, her heart racing. In the split second of freedom, she realized the figure was slowly dissipating like smoke in the wind. The truth broke over her like a wave. Heavy and oppressive Lily was trapped, and the forest was using her voice, her likeness, to draw her closer into its icy embrace. Help! Sarah screamed, breathless as she caught sight of the chaos swirling around her. Panic swirled with understanding, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't let it end. Then came the whisper that settled into her bones like poison. You will join us, Sarah, and beneath it all, in the dark, a shadow moved. Larger, more defined, slinking closer, wielding the intent to capture. What was this entity? Who had it become? As Sarah's resolve flared, she understood that each second ticking away brought her closer to a choice. She had to make it fast before all hope vanished into the echoing laughter of the forest. Would she dive deeper into the heart of darkness to seek her daughter, or was it already too late? The shadows shifted again, and Sarah felt them swirl around her like a living thing. They beckoned, tantalizing her with promises of reunion, all while whispering threats that pricked her skin like needles. Her heart thudded louder, drowning out the laughter, but the echoes of despair only grew more pronounced with each fleeting moment. Suddenly, a forceful rush of wind burst through the thicket. It clawed at her hair and tore branches from their moorings, sending flakes of decaying leaves spiraling. This was a sign. A desperate act from something sinister lurking just beyond her reach. Lily! She cried out once more, a sound torn from her very core. The darkness around her pulsed, a seething mass of malicious intent. Every instinct screamed at her to run, yet she felt anchored, bound to the spot by sheer terror and longing. Ahead, the ghostly figure flickered again, its shape shivering in and out of focus, but its voice remained unmistakable, sweetly taunting, wrapping her in false comfort. Come, Mommy. But there was another voice, deeper, a guttural growl devoid of warmth. Sarah. It saturated the air, pooling around her as if it were alive, crawling into her ears. It held an urgency, a desperate plea to resist whatever temptation lay ahead. Her eyes darted back to the drumming shadows, now forming grotesque shapes, faces twisted in agony, mouths opening in silent screams, time fractured. She spun around, the mist closing in, the world spinning like a kaleidoscope of torment and voices. They won't let you leave, the malicious whispers slashed through her defenses. She could feel them creeping through the cracks of her resolve, exploring her darkest fears, exploiting her heart's ache. My baby, Sarah whimpered, uncertainty gnawing at her insides. The hollow hope echoed like a cruel joke. She turned back towards the figure, now contorting. "Stop!" she shouted. "Just show me where she is." In response, the spectre twitched, the semblance of Lily grainy and distant. "Join us, Mommy, it's so easy. We can be happy together." A rush of anger flared within Sarah. No! The weight of the forest's hold became unbearable, its darkness pressing down on her, squeezing, suffocating. She was losing herself in the cacophony, memories of laughter, of warmth being dissected, twisted. With sudden clarity, she remembered the stories whispered around campfires, the cautionary tales of those who sought to save their loved ones but vanished themselves in the process. She couldn't be another lost soul. "Get away from me!" she screamed, pushing back against the unseen force, and in that moment, the laughter stopped. A silence fell over the forest, heavy and thick. The figure lurched forward, a face riddled with darkness. "Why resist? You belong to us now." She staggered back, feeling the trees shift around her, their branches inching closer, clawing. The absence of noise throbbed in her ears as dread seeped into her bones. She had to act, to fight back with everything she had. Gathering her breath, she whispered, "Lily, I will find you." The declaration carried through the stillness, shaky but fierce. In response, a tremor rippled through the ground, shaking the very roots beneath her. And then, unexpectedly, an impulse surged within, rushing fiercely through her veins. It ignited a power she didn't know she possessed, the one to resist, but as she fought against the darkness clenching her heart, Sarah could see another silhouette, taller, more menacing, lurking behind the fading image of her daughter. A malevolent force, watching, waiting. "Do you really think you can escape?" the voice crooned, chilling her blood. "You have already taken a step too far." With renewed fear coursing through her, Sarah hurriedly turned away from shadows, ready to flee deeper into the forest. But the path ahead shimmered with that same dark call, gravelly whispers promising answers yet leading nowhere. What choice would she make now? Trapped between the cries of a lost child and the shadow of her own demise, Sarah raced against time to find hope before it vanished, threading between terror and salvation. And then came that ghastly laugh again, echoing through the night. What had she truly unleashed upon herself? How deep into this nightmare was she willing to go to save Lily? As panic mounted, so too did the realization time was slipping away, and the darkness had no intentions of letting her go. Would she find her daughter's light, or was the forest determined to extinguish it forever? The forest closed in, shadows thickening around Sarah as she stumbled deeper into the night. The laughter reverberated in her skull, a twisted echo of joy she once knew. Desperation clawed at her throat. "Lily!" she called again, her voice raw and trembling. Each step felt weighted, the earth itself protesting her presence. It was as if the trees were alive, leaning closer, suffocating her will. "Mommy!" The voice rang out again, but it was different this time, strangled, frightened. She froze. "What? Where are you?" The ground trembled beneath her feet, an answering shudder rippling through the roots. A low, bone-chilling growl reverberated from somewhere deep within the shadows. Panic surged anew. Something was watching her. It wasn't just the forest, it was something else, something hungry. Sarah, the guttural voice twisted her name like a knife, slicing through the veil of night. "You're coming home." Combating the instinct to flee, she took a step forward. The mist coiled around her ankles, urging her to submit. She could feel the pull, the lure of the darkness whispering secrets, promising tearful reunions and eternal rest. But she could not give in. Not yet. She turned, her breath catching at the flicker of movement. A figure nestled between the trees. Hair wild and limbs slender, it stood barely illuminated in the thick shadows, eyes wide and pleading, much like her own. "Lily?" Sarah's heart skipped, the name hanging heavy on her lips as she forced herself to move toward the silhouette. "No." The figure retreated, sliding back into the dark embrace of the trees. "You can't." "Why?" The response arrived as a rush of wind, colder than the rest. It will take you both. The laughter roared back, drowning out her cries, engulfing the air with a dreadful appetite. Panic swelled within her. What did it mean? Help me! She cried, looking around desperately. Show me where to go. Silence enveloped her again, thick like a blanket. It was an oppressive stillness, a moment before the storm. Veiled whispers scattered through the air, mocking her despair. The shadows pressed closer, the trees curling like clawed fingers, then she saw a flash of a face, pale and grotesque, merging within the darkness, a reflection of agony mixed with rage. You dare call for your child when you are already forsaken? It hissed, a slithering sound that made her stomach churn. The ground quaked beneath her, roots twisting upward as if trying to trap her. Screams echoed from deep within the earth, a chorus of lost souls wailing for release. Stay with us, Sarah. Clenching her fists, she forced herself to remain upright, even as the shadows shifted and danced around her. I will find you, Lily. I want to let you go. She shouted defiantly. Mommy. Help. The voice faded, swallowed whole by the cacophony of shadows. A rippling wave of rage surged, igniting a spark deep within her, a force of will that roared against the dying embers of despair. I'm not afraid of you. She screamed. I will fight. The trees twisted and groaned in response, the wind screeching through the branches. Something stirred within the darkness. A shadow slid closer, narrowing its focus, hungry for her defiance. You think your cries will save her? It sneered, voice like gravel against metal. The darkness is your ally now, you cannot escape. A shudder of cold realization shot through her. The very forest thrived on her despair. Every plea, every step further spiraled her deeper into its clutches. But she couldn't back down. And as time slipped away, an unbearable choice smoldered in her heart. Does she abandon the fight to save Lily, or plunge further into this nightmare, facing whatever horror awaited her? Each moment weighed heavier than the last, and she inhaled deeply, stirring her resolve. Lily! She shouted, prepared to step into the abyss if it meant saving her daughter. But the shadows writhed with new menace, and a voice hissed from the depths, you don't know what you're unleashing, what lies beneath. The path faded before her eyes, a tangled maze of despair and dark promises. What exactly was waiting to be unleashed? And could she truly navigate through this darkness to the light? The trees closed in tighter, their trunks gnarled and twisted, blocking out any remaining light. The chilling air seemed to thicken like molasses, slowing her every breath. Sarah could feel her heart racing, wild against her ribcage, a frantic drum echoing her fears. She strained to hear any sign of Lily, any sound that might guide her through the impending doom, but all that met her ears were the sinister whispers that wrapped around her like a shroud. Stay in the dark, a voice slithered through the cold air, urging her toward surrender. No! She barked, almost instinctively. Each syllable pushed back against the weight of the shadows, but with every refusal, the darkness seemed to gain strength. She forged ahead, yanking her feet free from the grasping roots beneath. Lily! Sarah's throat strained, each shout a desperate plea. The shadows fluttered, mocking her cries. And then, amid the tangle of trees, she spotted a flicker of movement. Mommy! The faint whisper of her daughter's voice drifted toward her, a mere wisp caught in the wind, sending shards of hope through her chest. Where? I'm here. She didn't hesitate, springing toward the sound. Yet the forest twisted in on itself, paths shifting like a living maze, trapping her in a snare of despair. Help! The voice, was it real? The wind echoed it back, taunting her, distorting the fragile connection she still held to her daughter. No! No! A surge of fear consumed her as she stumbled forward, branches grasping at her clothes, tearing at her flesh like skeletal fingers. Tell me where you are. The ground shook violently, the forest croaking and moaning as if it were alive, protesting her presence. Above the cacophony, laughter rang out, deep and sinister, making her skin crawl. "You mine, Sarah." The growl rose from the depths, and for a moment, she could feel it wrap around her, cold and pulsating like a heartbeat. The laughter ceased, replaced by heavy breathing that reverberated through the hollowed trees surrounding her. In that moment, Sarah heard a different sound. A soft whimper, so near it made her stomach drop. "Mommy!" The cry was breathless, heavy with dread. "Help me, Lily." Determined, she dashed toward the sound, heedless of the growing shadows pressing on her. "I'm coming, baby. I'm coming." Her voice was hoarse, thick with fear, but she fought against it. The voice responded with a shriek of terror, a desperate plea that shattered her resolve into 1,000 jagged pieces. "Mommy!" The call faded, swallowed by the malignant woods. "No!" Panic bubbled over as she raced toward a clearing that appeared before her, the darkness receding slightly. But as she stepped inside, time itself seemed to twist. The space felt warped, like a funhouse mirror reflecting her deepest fears. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak, its bark hollowed, wide enough for her to see shadows dancing within. The air thickened, cloying with a sweetness that clawed at her throat, mixing dread with an overwhelming sense of trepidation. But there, beyond the tree's blackened embrace, a flicker of movement caught her eye. "Lily!" She leaped forward, overcome by urgency, but hesitated at the edge. A chilling laugh licked the air, and suddenly, she felt like prey, waiting to be devoured. "Your child is lost," it taunted. "You can feel it, can't you?" Sweat dripped down her back as she clutched her chest. "You're lying." "Am I?" The voice coiled around her, tightening like a noose. Gritting her teeth, she stepped closer to the oak, trying to drown out the echoes around her. "Leave her alone. I will find her." But as she peered into the hollow, eyes adjusting to the darkness, her heart stopped. There, within the depths, she saw reflections of faces anguished, twisted, reaching outward. Faces of the lost, their mouths open in silent screams. "Mommy!" "No!" The plead cut through her like ice. She stumbled back, the realization crashing over her like a wave. The forest fed on desperation. This was a trap, and she walked right into it. But a single flicker of hope surged within her. "I will get you, Lily," she cried, voice trembling but fierce, even as dread seeped into her bones. A sudden howl of wind blasted through the clearing, a tempest that brought with it darkness so thick she could barely breathe. And then, from the shadows, something emerged, curling and slithering, its form writhing like smoke. A voice, deep and twisted, broke through the chaos. "Do you wish to save her? Then you must give up everything you are." Sarah stood helpless, heart pounding. She thought of Lily, trapped somewhere in the grasp of this twisted nightmare. What price was she willing to pay to save her? The choice loomed like a guillotine, and just as she opened her mouth to respond, the shadows lunged forward, swallowing her cries whole. What echoes of her past would she have to confront? How far down the rabbit hole would this descent take her? The darkness wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. Sarah felt panic claw at her throat as the shadows pulsed with a life of their own. She stood frozen, heart thundering, realizing the weight of the choice placed before her. The voice whispered again, weaving through the stagnant air. "What will you sacrifice for your child?" A surge of rage surged within her. "I'll do anything." Her voice broke through the silence, a battle cry against the encroaching despair. The shadows laughed, a low, guttural sound that echoed ominously around her. "Anything?" the twisted voice crooned. The wood creaked and groaned, as if the ancient oak was breathing with the darkness. The leaves rustled like whispers of forgotten souls. "Then let us see if you truly know what you are capable of." With that, a sharp pain pierced through her soul, a vivid flashback overwhelming her senses. She was suddenly back in her childhood home, a place filled with laughter and light before the fear, before the loss. She watched her younger self, blissfully unaware, chasing fireflies in the backyard. Joy bubbled in her chest, but it quickly twisted into sorrow as she remembered the darkest day, the day she lost her brother. "Watch closely, Sarah," the voice slithered, shifting the scene around her. The darkness wrapped up her memories, each layer a reminder of her failures and losses. "Can you feel the warmth of love? Or will you turn the other way?" "No!" she screamed, tearing herself away from the vision. The world around her blurred, shifting as the shadows dangled memories of the past like bait. Each laugh twisted into cries, each smile into endless despair. Sarah gritted her teeth, pushing through the suffocating memories. "I was there for him. I won to forget him." But the shadows only tightened their grip, dragging her back into the depths of regret. "Your brother's laughter is just a fleeting memory," the voice taunted. "What about the laughter of your child? What effort will you make to keep her?" The moment hung heavy in the air, a knife's edge ready to drop. "Let my brother go. I've paid enough," she shouted, each word a battle against the darkness closing in. An echo of her brother's laughter lingered, and with it a flood of guilt washed over her. "You could have saved him," the shadows hissed. "But now you must choose again." Gritting her teeth, Sarah stumbled backward, feeling for the oak. Touching it grounded her momentarily, and she found herself gasping for clarity. "I want to abandon Lily. I choose her." The laughter intensified, a cacophony of derision and fear. "Then prepare for what it means to genuinely sacrifice, to lose everything to save the one you love." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her, the trees swaying, as if the entire forest was a living, breathing entity that wanted nothing more than to consume her. "If you want her, then you must face the embodiment of all your fears," the voice rasped, and from the darkness, shapes began to form, figures molded from shadows, mocking and wailing. "Face them, Sarah." It flared like a fire in her chest, spreading warmth through the cold dread wrapping around her. She steadied herself, pulling strength from the memories of love, protection, and her fierce desire to save her daughter. "Lily!" she shouted into the abyss, determination blazing through her. "I will not let you go." As she stepped into the darkness, the figures around her shifted, revealing pained faces of her past, the brother she lost, the mistakes she made. They circled her, hands grasping, begging, but amid them, she felt a spark, a flicker of light. It was Lily's laughter, vibrant and strong, pushing back against the shadows. "Mommy, help!" With every ounce of strength, Sarah propelled herself forward. "I'm coming, Lily. I want to let you down." But the shadows surged back, angered by her defiance. "No one escapes the darkness, Sarah." They screamed, her vision began to blur as walls of darkness closed in. Sarah's heart raced, the weight of loss pressing against her. Would she fight through her pain, or succumb to the endless night? The choice lay ahead. The voices crescendoed into deafening roars, drowning her resolve. "You will face the consequences very soon." And just like that, the darkness swallowed her whole, silence wrapping around her once more. What awaited her on the other side? Would she find Lily? Or would she lose herself to the true darkness lurking within? Sarah stumbled, the shadows tightening their grasp around her. It felt like fingers of ice pressed against her skin, digging deeper, and every breath turned to ice in her lungs. "Lily!" she shouted, but her voice echoed back, swallowed by the growing darkness. The world around her twisted, pulling her into a vortex of panic and despair. The shapes morphed, grotesque visages rising from the shadowy depths. They whispered her secrets, the dark truth of her soul laid bare. She could hear her thoughts, twisted and vile, entwined with the mocking laughter of the shadows. "You think you can save her?" they hissed. "You couldn't even save him." "No." Her defiance flared anew, pushing against the overwhelming pressure. In that moment, a memory clicked, her mother's warm hands wrapping around her shoulder, soothing and reassuring. You are stronger than this darkness, Sarah. Drawing from the strength of that memory, she thrust herself past the figures, diving further into the void. Each step felt like wading through honey, thick and suffocating. Yet a small glow flickered ahead, a beacon calling her. Mommy. Lily's voice rang through the blackness, pure and piercing. A surge of adrenaline washed over her. She raced toward the light, weaving through the encroaching shadows. They shrieked and howled, but she pressed on. I'm coming, Lily. Each syllable pushed through her grit, forging forward despite the overwhelming fear clawing at her mind. As the glow expanded, terrifying silhouettes faded temporarily, allowing Sarah to glimpse a warped version of what lay beyond. She found herself in a dimly lit room, cold and damp, a mirror image of her own home but twisted, the air thick with decay. Dark shapes moved just out of sight, lurking in the corners like hungry predators. Lily? She called, her heart racing as it echoed among the dank walls. The silence that answered was unsettling. A chill crawled across her skin, and her heart thudded heavily in her chest. Then she heard it, a soft giggle, familiar and pure. Mommy. There it was again, a whisper of innocence amidst the nightmare. Where are you? Panic gripped her as she spun around, seeking the source. The walls seemed to be closing in, shifting around her like a labyrinth infused with malice. The laughter rang out again, echoing off the walls, more haunting than she remembered. It was rhythmic, almost teasing. Lily. She dashed toward the sound, each step draining her energy. The echoes warped around her, dark shapes darting by, clawing at her sanity. With desperation swelling in her chest, she rounded a corner and stumbled into a larger room. There, at the far end on a torn rug, stood a small figure with her back turned. Shimmering in unearthly light, the edges of the figure flickered with uncertainty. Mommy, help. The voice was her daughter's, but distorted and tainted with shadows, her breath caught in her throat. Lily. The figure slowly turned. Sarah gasped, horror tightening her chest as she saw the truth behind those wide, fearful eyes. Mommy, the figure was not entirely her daughter. It was a grotesque reflection, a vaporous imitation that twisted between her memories of love and the darkness that held her captive. Stay away. Sarah cried, instinctually backing up. The shadows surged around the twisted figure, hissing, mocking her sorrow. Your fear is what keeps me alive, it rasped, its voice a blend of Lily's childhood innocence and the corrupted shreds of the darkness. What will you sacrifice to free me, Mommy? The walls of the room pulsed, echoing with the weight of that impossible question. She could feel the shadows tightening, preparing to strike. Would she risk everything to save a specter? Time seemed to freeze. What if this is how it ends? Whispered the shadows, their cold breath brushing against her face. What happens when you lose again? And then Sarah froze, the flickering light dimming. Would she let fear dictate her choices once more? The darkness stirred, a storm brewing, threatening everything she held dear. The sinister laughter grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. Caught between what was real and what was a nightmare, one question remained. How far would she fall into despair to save her daughter? In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah felt the weight of darkness pressing down. Would she be lost to the shadows forever or find a way to save both herself and Lily? But before she could decide, the ground beneath her trembled, and from the shadows rose a figure, one she hadn't expected, one she couldn't outrun. Do you really think you can choose? It whispered with a grin. The haunting question rang in her ears as the shadows lunged forward, ready to consume her whole. Would she confront this new terror? Or would the price of her sacrifice be even greater? The darkness erupted around Sarah, the shadows writhing as if eager to devour her whole. Her heart raced like a drum, a wild tempo begging her to escape. Fear clawed at her throat as she shook her head from side to side, desperate to drown out the twisting whispers. You're not real. She screamed, fighting to pierce through the confusion. The shadowy figure, her daughter's haunting doppelganger, tilted its head, a grotesque mimicry of innocence. But I am, Mommy, I am everything you dread. Each word twisted sickeningly in her gut. A fresh wave of defiance rose within her. No! She yelled. You're lying. The figure laughed, its sound a cacophony of echoes taunting her with every misstep, every failure she had ever faced. In the swirls of shadows, memories flared like dying embers: her brother's laughter, the warmth of her mother's embrace, Lily's innocent smiles. I want to let you take me, Sarah declared, pushing back against the darkness with fierce determination. The ancient oak resounded with life, trembling as if it recognized her fight. You don't own me. I will find Lily. With every bold step forward, she felt the shadows bend, cracking, shaken by her courage. The darkness recoiled, faltering as if hit by a wave of light. Was this her moment? Mommy. Lily's voice broke through the chaos, crystal clear amid the tumult. It ignited something within Sarah, a burning determination to save her daughter. Lily. Where are you? The shadows hissed around her, but she propelled herself forward through the swirling mist. As she drew closer, the monstrous figure distorted, struggling against the surge of her will. Leave now, Sarah, warned a familiar deep voice, a guardian barrier against the encroaching dread. It was the protective presence that had followed her, offering hope amid despair. The swirling darkness faltered when confronted with her force, and for a moment, the twisted reflection of Lily crumpled. It was at that instant of vulnerability Sarah seized her chance. Enough. I am not afraid of you, she shouted. I will choose love over this fear. The figure shrieked, a sound filled with rage and pain that struck at her heart like a dagger. In a blast of resolve, she surged past the shadow, racing toward the flicker of light in the distance that was her daughter's voice. Each step burned in her legs, fed by desperation and hope. Entering the glimmering space, the shadows shrieked in protest while the grotesque figure twisted and distorted in her wake. There, in the distance, she saw her Lily, seated in the soft glow of the room. Mommy. Lily's arms reached out, and Sarah charged forward, crossing the threshold between light and dark. The cacophony of shadows swirled behind her, threatening to pull her back, but she fought against their grasp. Let her go, Sarah screamed, summoning everything she had left. The moment her fingertips brushed Lily's small hands, warmth surged like fireworks igniting. Colors brightened around them, banishing the shadows. Together, they shared in the glow, lifting their spirits above the darkness like a brilliant dawn breaking. The laughter morphed into wails, the shadows faltering as they flailed against the brilliance, shrinking back as Sarah held her daughter tightly. We are stronger than this. We will break free together. The dark entity's shape flickered, its rage palpable as it screeched, you will pay for this defiance. But Sarah's conviction reached a fever pitch. In her heart, she felt the love she had for her child coursing through her veins, a life force that the darkness could not touch. Never again will you threaten my family, Sarah bellowed, and in that moment, her heart surged with a powerful light. A pulse radiated out from her, drenched in hope and love. Shattering through the shadows, it expanded across the room, illuminating every dark corner. No! The darkness shrieked as it began to peel away, unraveling like an old rag. Sarah clung tighter to Lily, feeling the warmth of safety return. The feeling seeped through them, knitting old wounds closed, binding them in the aftermath of fear. With a final, earth-shattering roar, the shadows retreated, spiraling away into the void from whence they came. As they vanished, the room transformed, bursting with warmth and nurturing light. The decaying walls pulsed with life, sunlight flooding in through breaks in the ceiling. Lily looked at her mother, eyes wide and innocent. Mommy, you came for me. Always, my love. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, a cascade of relief rushing over her. The haunting weight lifted as she felt the pure, unwavering bond between them, a lifeline that would never break. Outside, the forest side, shadows retreating as the light broke over the trees, changing their twisted forms back to familiar silhouettes. They were just trees again, standing watch but no longer a threat. Hand in hand, Sarah and Lily stepped from the clearing, breathing in crisp, rejuvenating air. The weight of danger slackened, replaced by warmth and the distant echo of laughter, a sacred reminder of their journey. As they crossed the threshold back into the world, Sarah turned back one last time. The forest stood still, but she no longer felt fear. She had faced the darkness, and together with her daughter had reclaimed their lives. "Let us go home, sweetheart." The two began to walk, hearts lighter with every step, grateful for their bond, renewed with purpose and unwavering love. Now is your turn to act. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm and keep the content coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Let's hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.